Well, I'd just like to thank Stu on behalf of everybody and all the presents he's given for being a really good lad most of the time. And I would like to say, Callie, you're looking absolutely wonderful. It's an honour to be at this auspicious occasion, and I'd like to say to Stu, it's wonderful to see you out of shorts. When Stu asked me to be his best man, I was absolutely hit. It was a real pleasure. I was really honoured because I've known Stu for a long time now, and he really is a very, very good guy. And I feel like it's coming. Easy tiger. Easy tiger. Pleasure before pain. He's a really good guy. I've known Stu for a lot of years, and I'm very honoured that I've been asked to be here today. So thank you for that. And I'm always looking for win-win scenarios, and I didn't plan a speech. I sort of planned it, and then it changed, and then I heard loads of stories today, and then somebody told the stories, and I thought I had to change my speech. So it's actually changed so many times in the last couple of hours, I can't even begin to tell you. I'm just relying on my capacity to remember as much as I can now, but the good news is, the very good news is, that there's been a very, very good offer for me of a very kind individual in this room who has decided that they will take their top off if I bomb, to take the attention off me and raise the jubilations level. So I would just thanks you. So it just goes to show that the love and dedication to the cause that is here today. I'm almost tempted to bomb just to see where that goes.
Come on, love.
Well, that's it. Or maybe it's just trying to place it to a straight bar. Why not? It's a perfectly respectable wedding. And I know that there's a few rumours going around at the moment because when you're asked to be best man, you don't really know what it entails, and the word best man is a very relative term. And usually, if you're asked to be best man, you never get the chance to prove it. And just say that. And then suddenly, I realised that this was a wedding with a difference. Stu asked me to be best man, and he asked me to stay with him the night before. Imagine my surprise when I realised there was a double bed. Well, you know, there's nothing like your last night before you make that grand commitment, is there? Stu, thank you for last night.
You're the best man.
And Callie, if he's a bit tired, I apologise in advance. He's a really good guy. Now, for those of you that don't know, I've known Stu a lot of times, and when he asked me to be best man, and I had to attempt to put together this speech. The difficulty for me was condensing the weight of great material I had on Stu in under an hour. And then I had to keep condensing and condensing down and realise I had all these great tales to tell, but I only had a certain time limit. So I'm going to keep it brief. And what I realised is it's been about 25 years, that's a quarter of a century since I first met Stu. And we went to school together back in the day where Sandy here was both of our teacher. And it's been very difficult for me to get used to calling her Sandy as opposed to Mrs. Burgess. And it's wonderful to see that Stu's grown up into a fine, outstanding member of the community and a great teacher, except for the fact he can't spell. If they had red fonts on Hotmail, I would actually correct his emails and send them back to him. It's just become such an ongoing thing now. I'm just thanking the Lords that the next generations of students will hopefully have some common sense and a bit of cop on to know that all is not as it seems as they get taught. Now, it's fair to say that when we went to school together, that me and Stu weren't exactly the best of friends. See, I had a little extra weight, and Stu had this penchant for speaking his mind when it was least wanted or appreciated. So, it's also fair to say that if our careers advisors at the time had told me about the job description of a hitman, I would probably be in a different profession, and Stu would definitely not be here. The fact was, because of this traits that Stu had for telling things as it was, if you wanted direct advice with no nonsense, the John Smith approach, then Stu was your man. If you wanted a bit of care and empathy enmeshed in with the thing, then he was the last person to go. So he earned the nickname Boutros back in the day because he was never going to get a job in the UN. And that's still a nickname that today I still use quite regularly with him because he's a lot better these days. He still comes out now. I never really got to know or appreciate Stu until we worked in a Mexican restaurant when we after school. This was the time where I actually got to know Stu and stop hating him and realised that there was quite a lot about Stu that I really liked. We had the same quirky sense of humour. We had the same capacity for laughing at other people's misfortune. And quite frequently causing it. So we had a lot of funny times, a lot of good laughs during that period, and we really got to know each other. And another thing about Stu that he really was a gift to me was he's very competitive, and he brought that out in me. When we used to play sport together, we'd have to win, and I realised I had that extra 10% that I thought I was going to die. I still had to go on because there's nothing worse for me than the smug look on Stu's face if he got one over on me. It was enough incentive to just bring out that extra 10% and make me want to win. Because he is very competitive, and he brought that out. So that was a real gift. And people that know Stu know that he loves his sport. He loves his contact sports. He doesn't do any sort of airy-fairy stuff. He likes rugby, he likes high-impact stuff. And Stu doesn't like to pull out either. You're going in for a 50 minutes. One for the future. Callie, beware. He's going in, yes. Get used to it, that's what So, consequently, over the years of knowing Stu, every other phone call I seem to make, he's got a new injury. Now Stu, when he's doing sport, he's full of beans and he's really happy and he's really full of life. When he's injured, he's a miserable sod. And I just listen, yeah, I'm injured, I've broken my rib, there's nothing I can do. And I'm like, oh, that's a bit rough, Stu. Yeah, and he's been given more good advice by medical professionals than anyone I know. And I worked as a nurse for 13 years, so I know quite a lot of people that have been given medical advice. And I've never in my life had people ignore good. He's been injured more times than Darren Anderton, and he's made more comebacks against good advice than George Foreman. So the thing is, I've realised that giving Stuart good advice, good sound medical advice, is a complete waste of time. Total waste of time. Now, the first time that I met Callie, I went down to Brighton and I hadn't met her before. And Stuart gave me a little bit of a briefing. He told me about Callie, that she was just about to go in for an operation. Now, what had happened is she'd broken her foot a year ago. And she knew there was pain. She knew there was pain in her foot, but she hadn't done anything. She'd endured the pain. She'd risen above it. She'd gone through it. She'd beaten the pain. So much so that her bone had set in the wrong place. She'd fought the pain, she'd been there, she'd beaten that. And she was going to come out with this that night, which was quite incredible. I thought, this is a tough woman. I really appreciate that. Especially where Stu's concerned. And it wasn't enough that she was coming out that night. She was going to wear high heels. And I thought, well, that's a bit silly. And it wasn't until Stu came up and he looked me in the face and he said, do you believe that anyone can be so stubborn? It's an interesting statement. So we went out that night, and guess what? After a couple of hours, Callie was on, I can't walk! Oh, my feet are hurting! Oh, these high heels! I said, it's all right, Callie, let's swap shoes. I'll take the hit. I'll take the hit. And she's like, well, fuck off! And it was at that moment, dealing with the shoes, the feet thing going on, that I realised that Stu had met his soulmate. One thing that I know about Callie is she's a lot of fun. And I've only met Callie a couple of times, but I really look forward to getting to know her a lot better. And she is an absolutely perfect match for Stu. And if ever there was a couple that were destined to be together, it's these two. Now, I looked at the job description of the best man, and somewhere down the line, they say, now it's time to give some advice. Well, you know, where do I begin? There's no point giving Stu advice, and I get the sense that Callie may be So all I can do is offer a song, and if any of you feel inclined to join in or know the words, then I encourage that you join me, because this is the best advice I can find to Stu and Callie. Some things in life are bad. They can really make you mad. Other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's gristle, time rattle, give a whistle. And this will help things turn out for the best. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. When life seems jolly rotten, there's something in it. And that's to laugh and smile and dance and sing. When you're feeling in the dark, don't be silly chance. Just touch your lips and whistle, that's the thing. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Because life is quite absurd, you be asked the final word. Face the curtain with a bow. Forget about your sin, give the audience a grin. Enjoy it, it's your last chance anyhow. Always look on the bright side of life. Just before you draw your terminal breath. Because life It's true, sorry. It's on the show, I'm laughing at you guys. Just remember that the last laugh is on you.